Today I'm talking with Alfredo Mathews. He is a community builder, and he talks a lot about what are the raw ingredients for building any sort of entrepreneurial ecosystem. We talk about the different pieces of that. We talk about how to phase it from a maturity perspective. We even talk a little bit about AI and kind of how he sees that in impacting wealth creation. Today we have a pretty centralized, place where a lot of that money goes to, whether it's corporations or even geographic, and really how to disseminate that through a bunch of other communities. And so it was a fascinating conversation, and his perspective was great. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Alfredo, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate it. It's awesome for you to be here.
Todd, thank you so much. Excited to have a great conversation with you.
Yeah. Well, good. So why don't you talk a little bit about just your background and how you end up where you are?
Sure. So I'm a serial entrepreneur like yourself and probably many of your listeners, but I did not begin as an entrepreneur. I actually got my start in public education. I was a teacher for many years back in New York City, a teacher in California. I was involved in youth development, love young people. About 12 years ago, I made the transition into entrepreneurial ecosystem building, started through a nonprofit where I did a lot of youth entrepreneurship work, connected a lot of high schools around the Bay Area with Silicon Valley companies, PayPal, Salesforce, EY, SAP, all this, entrepreneurial ecosystem there. But I realized what I really love is creating on-ramps to business ownership. And so for the last 7 years, I've been starting businesses really focused on small and medium-sized businesses. How do you help businesses get off the ground, scale, get to profitability? That's what I love. And so hopefully that will be a lot of what we talk about today.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So maybe talk a little bit about your philosophy on just kind of entrepreneurial ecosystem building, right? I mean, Brad Feld wrote a book on, kind of what he did in the Boulder area. I think, there's obviously the Silicon Valley model. I think, you're in Plano, Texas. I'm in Rapid City, South Dakota. We talked about New York City. We talked about Syracuse. Those are not all Silicon Valley, right? And so there's a big concentration there. But how do communities think about building kind of these entrepreneurial ecosystems going forward?
Well, I would say something that I'm very interested in and maybe some area of alignment is every local economy needs an entrepreneurial ecosystem. We need local economic generation. I think that what has happened over the last 100 years is we've had a lot of constant corporate consolidation, a lot of concentration of companies. That means that, New York City was the economic engine in the 1950s. In the 1990s, it became Silicon Valley and the Bay Area. Now it is moving more towards Texas, and we tend to kind of just have these giant hubs that suck up all of the resources and all of the talent. And I think what we would be better off with is more of a distributed network where local economies each have their niche, each have their local flavor, where there is some access to capital and people can grow and build in their local communities. I think there's just too much concentration of wealth and power in certain verticals and in certain places. And ultimately, I don't think that benefits entrepreneurial ecosystems because you just can't have an ecosystem of all giant corporations. You need, a forest needs needs an undergrowth. You need healthy soil. We have to have some competition. We have to have some access points. So that's really what I'm interested in is more diversity in ecosystems so that people have access to business ownership, which I think is essential for everyone.
So let's talk about this because I've been looking at this problem through Rapid City's lens for a while, and I think there's lots of well-intended people that want what you're saying. I think it's super hard to do, right? I think the skill set is different, and so let's just go through it. I think there's VCs that want to create this because of financial gain, but maybe they lack some of the programming components to get people from idea and a nice pitch deck to sustainable business. Then you have people that are in economic development that are well-intended but have never run a business in their life. And so again, I think their programming and the value that they provide is probably not what entrepreneurs need. And so you kind of run down this list of there's lots of well-intended people that want the outcomes you're talking about, but it's difficult to put the pieces together. And so I'm not saying we've got it all figured out, but I think we started with programming. We started saying, what does an entrepreneur need from idea to first handful of customers? And we're not going to make every decision for them, but we're going to provide a framework that keeps them out of the ditch, and they're going to make their decisions along the way with the best possible outcome to basically having a business that looks like it's real.
Yes. Well, I think that creating thriving local economies I'm not saying just have local economies. The United States is the economic engine of the world. Like, we have 25% of the global GDP. Like, the United States is a tremendous success. I just want to ensure that local economies have access to this economic engine and that we're firing on all cylinders. And what I mean by firing all cylinders is that everyone who has talent, everyone who has ideas, who wants to participate in this prosperity, has an on-ramp to access it. And so, yeah, it can't just be venture capitalists are not going to create thriving ecosystems in Grand Rapids or in Plano or anywhere else. It cannot just be government. I actually believe in 4P partnerships: public, private, philanthropic, and people. And you actually need all four at the table. People are the entrepreneurs. If the entrepreneurs are not at the table, if you don't have people who are going to put skin in the game, who want to create the businesses, forget about it. Yeah. Game over. That's essential. You need the private sector. If you do not have a profitable revenue generating business that is investable, private capital is never going to flow in. If private capital never flows in, you're going to stay small. You're never going to grow. Public sector is important because the federal government, as we're seeing, seeds a lot of basic research. It funds the universities. It has procurement that helps every company, right? It's the first investor and it's the final customer for so many industries and verticals. And philanthropy is important because sometimes the economics don't make sense. And if you really want to do something that has public-private purpose, you need some catalytic funding that makes the economics work out. And so philanthropy plays a really important role. Yes, it's difficult to align private, public, philanthropic, and people. I'm doing it. I know a lot of other people who are doing it. We're all trying to navigate this. But I think if you can get all of those stakeholders aligned to a model, to an ecosystem, that's how you get a thriving ecosystem. When the ecosystem is thriving, that's going to create tax revenue that's going to help the public sector defray the costs of a federal government that is not solvent, that cannot continue to subsidize things. And if you create an economic engine, a flywheel, you don't need ongoing philanthropic support. So that's my desire, and that's what I want to see.
So maybe talk to me a little bit how practically that goes. You know, what do you look for? So let's break this up into phases, right? Because there's a maturity curve to what you're talking about. Ideally, all these pieces are in place, and then you have a thriving kind of ecosystem. But at the beginning, you maybe have elements of this. So can you help me understand, when you look at like a community, what are the elements that you look for to start with? And then kind of what is a phased approach to doing that? I mean, I'm just trying to, like, I get the end game to that, but it's really going from when you come into a community that maybe has 150,000 people in it. There's obviously some talent. There's economic development partners that want to go do this. Maybe there's angel networks or something along those lines that can help kind of invest in some of those early stage. Like, what do you look for, and how do you nurture through a series of stages till like it's a self-sufficient, healthy ecosystem?
So I'll speak from my limited experience, because I know there's a lot of ecosystem builders. I'm a part of some networks, and there's all these ecosystem builders all over the place. I actually think ecosystem building does not have a business model, which is one of the struggles, because there's a lot of people who, what you're really talking about is, how do you take these siloed institutions, from higher education to government, local economic development, to the seed investors, to the entrepreneurs, and how do you create that win-win-win situation where everyone who's contributing to creating the value in the community benefits? I think it is going to look differently in different communities based on the assets of your community. But like we said, I think it does begin with the entrepreneur. If there are not entrepreneurs, if there are not creative people who have a desire for self-determination, and you have to put skin in the game. Business owners have to take risks. They need to put their own money in first. They need to jump first. And I think that oftentimes you identify an industry vertical where there is a promising market opportunity, and if you can create some economies of scale and you create synergy, you can share talent. That's how the ecosystem grows and develops, which I'm sure you're seeing in South Dakota. The approach that I'm taking right now is during the pandemic, we launched a company, ESO Ventures, out of Oakland, and we focused on making entrepreneurship accessible and worthwhile. Focus was Black and brown entrepreneurs in the East Bay, California. Started with a $25,000 contract from the local community college, the city, turned it into $22 million in contracts over the next 2 or 3 years, literally by writing legislation, closing, right? I like business development, so taking a relationship with one community college and doing $1 million partnership with 6 community colleges, right? Finding the public contracts that you could get. That is getting the public sector on board, getting philanthropy on board, getting the entrepreneurs on board. Our focus was sole proprietors who wanted to become employer enterprises, industry agnostic. We incubated 500 businesses. We deployed $6 million working capital, low interest debt capital into these businesses to help seed folks taking off. That's good. What I realized starting in 2023 is, oh my God, that's not enough. One, because California had a $90 billion surplus. In 2023, had a 60, or 2024 had a $60 billion deficit. As we're seeing right now, you cannot build things based on public funding. Public funding goes up, public funding goes down. Right? Our public funding model has a lot of problems. You also cannot rely on philanthropy. Philanthropy wants to fund shiny new things. I bet it's a little bit harder to get philanthropy in South Dakota. They like to be on the coast. They like to be in certain cities. They pick certain things. The outcomes don't really matter because they're not really changing the game.
Right. Yep.
It's more like marketing and celebrating, like that they're doing something. They're not putting in enough capital to really move the needle. What you really need, can you create something that private capital will invest in? Private capital doesn't care about ideology. It cares about return. If you're building something profitable and it's repeatable, you can get private capital to sustain it and to grow it. If you can't create something that's profitable and repeatable, you're going to get stuck. You're going to stall out. So that's my way of saying is you got to leverage the public dollars, the philanthropic dollars to invest into your people, figure out what that niche is, what that viable vertical is, and then you need to bring in investment. You need private capital to grow and to scale.
So that's interesting. I guess I'd like to juxtapose it with the way I've been thinking about it. And I'm not saying I got it right at all. I'm kind of I've gone more micro to macro, right? So basically I started with figure out the ingredient, like we agree on the same ingredient, right? Go find a good founder that has a business that's interesting, right? So we found this company called Property Meld. They did property maintenance for single and multifamily. So a maintenance platform, not super sexy, but lots of places. So if you're basically at a broken window or your toilet goes out or anything, there's just an app that you can go fill out all the information. It does scheduling. It brings in the vendors. Okay, great. It's not super sexy, but like I said, lots of people have this problem. So we started helping them and we started figuring out kind of some of the problems that they were solving. And then we did a handful of other ones and then we saw the trend, right? And so then we basically said, if we have a beacon in our community where somebody said, how did that happen, right? Those guys went from 0 to adding 100 jobs in our community and they're well-paying jobs. What happened? And so I think I tried to do a lot of talking to whether at the city or the state level, and it just didn't resonate because they didn't see it. And so I think once you saw it and they had one example of going through and saying, hey, yeah, I'd like some more of that, right? I'd like to go, can you give me 40 more of those? Now, all of a sudden, you got a seat at the table from more of the assets that you're talking about. But it was a lot of work to get that one set of co-founders to kind of build a scalable business. They did all the work. I don't want to like take any credit. They did the work. I was just somebody that helped them along the way because I had had some experience scaling a business. So then all of a sudden you have some success, and then there's now dollars coming in. There's more venture capital money that's saying, hey, I invested in your property mill company. Do you have more in your portfolio that are like that? And so I'm kind of doing it from the bottoms up, and maybe that's wrong, but given the assets that we have, I feel like it's kind of that way, right? Where it's like I still can't engage our state from a economic development standpoint. I think they still think software there's no IP in it. We shouldn't be doing it. We should be building manufacturing. It should have widgets. I need IP if I'm going to do any sort of investment. And so, that's difficult. I just think that like there's an opportunity today with AI and all the types of things that we're doing. And if we don't see that opportunity, then we're going to move forward. So let me just stop there. And so maybe the last thing I'd say in this is Property Meld is now giving back to the founders that are in the programs today, and that's happening all along. So these people are kind of bootstrapping and helping each other out. There's coffee meetups. There's people doing tours in the Black Hills to show the new guys here. I had this problem with you, that you did 6 months ago. Let me help you. We have masterminds that are kind of all the way through this. That mentors are really trying to build community for the people that are in the same stages of their journey, and that's working. But it's a slow slog. I think our first year we did 10. I think if we do 10 teams went through our program, if we do our job next year, we should be over 45. So that's kind of the scale of things that we're talking about doing.
Cool. I definitely do not want to give the impression that I think that this is a top-down movement. I think this is a bottom-up movement, but you have to align the
Totally
assets.
Agree. Yep.
And I don't know about South Dakota, how they invest. Most states have a lot of money that goes towards workforce development, that goes towards creating more entrepreneurial ecosystems, small business support. Like, I think that there's a lot of funding that are public dollars that are very poorly used.
Yep.
That could be repurposed to create more economic vitality.
Okay.
Not redistributing the resources to help folks after the fact, just subsidize, but how do you actually use public dollars to create more tax revenue and create more of a virtuous cycle? So that's why I believe in the public sector, and I also believe the public sector will invest oftentimes before the private sector in order to get things going. But you do need to start with the entrepreneur, you need to start with the local community, you need to start with an industry vertical. Sounds like what you're doing is great because you have talent and you have some success stories. Earlier, when I said that I have not seen that entrepreneurial ecosystem has a business model, I know a lot of ecosystem builders who play this intermediary role. They're not getting paid from the government. They don't have equity in the businesses. They're part of the learning community and they make introductions. Maybe they have a co-working space or they run programming. I have not seen very many people make a viable living, a sustainable living, unless you have an equity stake in the businesses.
Yep.
So you have to have some kind of way that you're a capital allocator and you're getting some of the upside, or you're getting big contracts in order to do the work. So I think that it's important that everyone has a business model and everyone has like a way to sustainably generate revenue or a passion project.
Yeah. So in all transparency, so we get money from our economic development here locally. So they take care of part of it. And then we do take an equity cut in each one of the startups that go through the program. We take 7.5%. And, we don't win unless they win, right? And so the goal is basically our incentives are aligned. And it's not about you getting in and out of the program. It's about a lifetime working with you because we're only invested in if you're successful, then we're successful. And so kicking you out of the nest at 6 months and saying you're done, that's not how this is working. You stay in our community. We help you build. We help you make good decisions. We're advisors on your board, whatever it happens to be. And so we'll see. I mean, obviously we're 3 years into this. But again, I like the idea of we're 100% founder focused, right? We're all founders in the mentors that we have, the general partners that we have. And we've been in your shoes. We understand, problems with, with co-founders, not making payroll, figuring out sales tax. Like we have had those experiences. And so I do think that helps relate to them and then help them along the way. And so again, is it the best business model in the world? Probably not. But is it the one that we're working through right now? It is. And so we have 10 people that work on this program doing all sorts of different roles. But you're assigned a mentor since day one that you start with, and you go all the way through the process with them. And we feel like that's part of something that's unique, and it's somebody who's tactically done it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's great. The entrepreneur needs to have skin in the game, and you as the entrepreneurial support organization or the accelerator, you have to have skin in the game. So that's super important. Like most things, I think having multiple revenue streams, so like having a fund that you can then invest into the best businesses that come through, allow you to get the upside as folks, grow and develop. So I think that's viable. That's important. Let's talk about, before we got on, I looked you up. I read your Substack. You just wrote an article about AI, AI as a co-founder, not just an AI agent, but AI as the co-founder. I think AI presents tremendous opportunities, and it's also going to present some tremendous challenges. And the point I want to talk about is AI going to democratize access to entrepreneurship, or is AI going to further concentrate winners and losers? I'm going to turn it to you first, and then I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah, I feel like you're flipping the switch. Like, whose podcast is this? Holy kidding. No, I think it's a good point. So we obviously have an opinion on this. I do think that this does democratize a lot of things. I think the one thing that we kind of look at as saying that's unique in this world is a couple things. So one, I think that a lot of incumbent software companies are struggling to add AI to their solutions, right? So I pick on Salesforce all the time just because, and SAP, I used to work at SAP. And they have all this legacy code, and now they're adding what they call AI on top of it. And it's done in a workflow that was our traditional workflow for the longest time. And then you're adding something onto it. And so to me, in some of these cases, I think it's lipstick on pig, right? And so I have a lot of friends who work at large organizations, and they look at initiatives for AI, and they think it's going to take their jobs. And so you see some reluctance within these larger organizations to not accept it, to actually help them do their job better and level up. They look at it as a threat. So I think that's one. I think two is, I think that them integrating it on a legacy code base is going to be difficult over time, which creates opportunity for startups, right? And so if you thought about a CRM, customer relationship management, if you could design that from ground zero with AI first, would that look very different than what we have in traditional HubSpot and Salesforce type of CRMs? So I think there's an opportunity. That's the first part I'd say. The second piece to it is I think that deep domain expertise in entrepreneurship is going to get more and more important. I think that you come out of college today and you don't really understand any problems and you want to be an entrepreneur. I think that that's a much harder gig, and you're going to have to figure out an edge. What we're starting to look at is, hey, there's a guy who is an orthodontist, and he runs a firm that does braces, and he wants to add AI to his business from a design perspective. That guy's been doing this for 15 years. He understands the market. He's got all the customers, and he sees a better way to do it. I want to invest in that dude. Or there's a guy that basically has got a civil engineering degree, runs a small firm that does construction, and he's saying as soon as it rains more than 2 inches, the Department of Natural Resources is up his butt, going, what are the mitigations that you're doing for runoff on your places? And there's no tools for that. And there's rules and there's penalties in every state, and they're different. And so he's saying, I think there's a good solution for that. And so I think that this domain expertise that they're bringing to the table is the special sauce with your entrepreneurial spirit and grit. We can always put AI around you. We can put other tools around you. We can supplement things like learning how to develop your code or your sales process. And so I think that's the direction that we're going in. Find niche little businesses, provide AI on top of that. But your domain expertise is probably the area that we value the most, because that's not something that's easily replicated in the LLMs today.
Awesome. I am very much in agreement. I am going to offer a caveat.
Okay.
I think 40-year-olds make the best entrepreneurs, right?
Okay.
Most people have to have some life
Real-world
experience, domain expert, real world experience before you're mature enough and you're ready to really drive a business. Carl Jung, the psychotherapist, he would not take anyone to study under him until they were 35, 36 years old, and they had already been successful doing something else first, right? You got to build your chops. You need to, right?
Yep.
So you're, right, you need the experience. And then at 35, 36, you're ready to really do your life's work. I believe your best work is your 40s and your 50s. 40 to 60 is like when you're really ready to do it. And if you can embrace technology, if you can embrace artificial intelligence, and you could wrap it around domain expertise, I think that's awesome. What I am concerned about is the platform economics that we have in this country, because we very much create models where whoever owns the platform extracts all the value from the users on that platform. So if you are a niche user and you are a niche technology, but you're building on top of a Google LLM or you're building on top of a Microsoft LLM, my concern is that the incumbents, who are very good at reinvention and looking around corners, are going to be able to capture the value from whatever vertical it is. So we have a tendency to aggregate value up to the top, right? So like Google owns search, 80% of search, right? Amazon, whatever. It's incredibly efficient. Americans love efficiency. We love cheap things. But what that happens is that everything aggregates. So I would love to see AI create more openings for more people to create value and compete. My concern is that people are going to be competing against monopolies, and ultimately the larger enterprises are going to see what people are doing, either acquire, copy, or somehow block innovation. I'm not a software person. Maybe you have a different perspective on this, but I think ownership is important, and I want to see more people own AI businesses and not just leverage someone else's platform AI, because I think AI is going to take so much of the value creation.
So I think it's an interesting perspective, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I think that there's two patterns, or some patterns that I would basically look at that say maybe this is different. One of them is, I think about like databases when I was kind of growing up in the industry. So I would say early 90s. You started to have things like, Oracle was a huge database. Microsoft SQL was a big database. And then we went open source, right? We went like Postgres. We basically started having open source tools that basically provided choice in the marketplace. And you look at today, depending on what you need, there's different tools for databases today. And, you could be on AWS and you can use Postgres. Most of our folks are using an open source tool today for their databases. And so that's an example. A more current one is Meta and Facebook. They basically open sourced all of their kind of their technology stack and their data centers. So they wanted to basically get mass adoption on those to compete against Microsoft and all the other people that were building, and Dell, that were basically saying, here's a data center in a box. And so they basically said, if we have a active ecosystem that's actually working on this, and it's cheaper, then people will look at it. We had another example where it was Linux versus Microsoft, right? So there's two operating systems. We have an open source in Linux, Red Hat. There's a whole bunch of those. That's predominantly what's run in most data centers today is open source. So we come to today and we say you have OpenAI, you have Claude and Anthropic, you have Gemini. Like those are the big three commercials. But then you also have Meta with Llama, you have DeepSeek, and you have Mistral. Like there's three decent models that are competitors that are not 100% of those of those commercial versions, but they're pretty good. And so my thesis on this is you probably, for most startups, do not need these large models because they're horizontally very good, but they do a lot of things, right? And so I do think that things like ChatGPT will be the consumer version that people will either pay or there's advertising on top of it to support it. But do a company that's specializing in management of wildland fire in a niche little space need all of that compute? No. What they need is an LLM that will make the decisions with their unique data. So could they use Mistral, DeepSeek, or Llama and basically put all of their domain expertise because it's such a niche little vertical, and then they're basically paying almost next to nothing. So that's the way I think this is going to happen. We still need people like Meta to continue to invest in large amounts of money, but I think they see it the same way, right? They say that if there's more people using open source tools, then there's always somebody that's going to buttress the monopolies that we have in the three big ones. And so it will never be 100%. That's not what I'm saying. And so, but if it does get to 80 or 90%, that's probably good enough for most of the software startups to build niche little LLMs that specifically do what they need. So let me just stop there and see if that.
So you're saying if the big three own 80 to 90% of the market, but open source does 10 to 20, or other way around?
No. It's like it's the quality of, right. So like if you can do 100 things in ChatGPT, you can only get 80 of them done in Llama, right? And so it's not going to be as good. It's just not going to be. But it's not trying to be like for like in most cases, right? You're not trying to be this horizontal tool for everybody. I think what we're saying is these open source tools will get smaller and then verticalized for the individual problem you're trying to solve.
So I like that in the AI co-founder world that you wrote about. I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. It's kind of like science fiction, right? I'm going to put on my AI suit and hey, AI, I want to support, small entrepreneurs in this vertical, boom, boom, boom. I have my own unique domain expertise, my own network, my own intrinsic knowledge. Let's go after, as I'm sleeping, the AI is working on it. Isn't there basically whoever has access to the best AI suit, whoever has access to the most compute, whoever has access to the best tools, aren't they going to be able to outcompete entrepreneurs who don't have access to the same tools? I mean, like, is it the quality of the entrepreneur and the timing that is going to win? Or is it going to be that basically, hey, Y Combinator has a proprietary suite of really incredible tools, and they're going to basically be finding the best of the best, right? Crowdsourcing from the entire world, the best of the best, and they're going to get the best technology, and they're going to have Mark Andreessen's capital, and right, and so it's going to be it's going to be a very competitive world, and it's going to be very difficult to compete against people who have the best technology, the best access to capital, the most insider information. Yes, if you have some really great domain expertise and some really niche knowledge, you can carve out a space. My concern is that the economy is just going to get eaten up by bigger players. And so that's my whole thing. My whole thing is, how do we make sure that you have a local advantage? You need to have a local advantage in your own community. And I'm not talking about software so much as I am talking about the real economy, products and services, because I've seen the same thing happen to HVAC companies and dry cleaners and everything else, because they can all be aggregated.
But Alfredo, why hasn't that happened before, right? Like we've been, Andreessen Horowitz and Y Combinator have been around a long time, right? And we've gone through epochs, right? Like we've gone through the internet, we've gone through mobile, we've gone through Bitcoin, or there's just all these different things where you could say the exact same thing, right? Where it's like they're going to have all the resources and they're going to win. Well, there's still plenty of smart people that are around to go do it. I think what I was trying to get across with my article is, if you have the same sort of philosophy about entrepreneurship as, I got to go build this website and I got to do my social media and I got to go do this and I got to do that, without thinking about AI as a partner in that, and basically saying, what is it that I'm intrinsically gifted to do? What is the part that's unique that I can go do? And how do I take all the crap that I know I can go do, but I can automate and go do? Like, go do that so that you can move up the stack, right? And so if you start thinking about it that way and unraveling the way you thought about building it. So if today we have like an AI agent that'll help you build a website, right? There's no reason why these guys should like spend a ton of time going, should I pick Wix? Should I go do something with Squarespace? Like, what am I going to go do, right? You should just say, here's a choice. There's 4 or 5 different templates. Pick the one, put the in the information and just go, right? Or the same one we have with B2B marketing. That is a pain in the butt today, right? There's probably 10 steps to getting good marketing going out. What we want them to focus on is go figure out the voice and the message. We'll help you do the mechanics, right? And so in every case, I want you to come back to the domain expertise that you bring to the table and leave the other pieces to it as the infrastructure and scaling around you. And we're not just unique about this, right? There's no reason why anybody can't do that. And so I think to me, it's more of a philosophical thought than it is just missing the boat.
Well, I agree. Let's systematize the things that can be systematized, and let's offload the cognitive load to an artificial intelligence that is really good at doing these rote things, those tasks that they're designed for. I'm all for that. I am just very concerned about ownership and wealth creation.
Me too.
And I want more people to have access to ownership and wealth creation. And so we're nearing the end of our time together, but this is obviously a much longer conversation. I'll just leave with this. Can I leave with one point?
Yeah.
The idea that if you are just a wage earner, you're falling behind. You need to have asset ownership stake. And so that's why I love entrepreneurship. When a business owner creates a business beyond the value that they're creating from their own labor. Entrepreneurship is not about creating a job, because as soon as you stop working, the business dies. It's about creating an asset that has more value beyond your labor. Yep. That's what I want people to understand, and that's what I want to support people to build and do.
So I guess the one piece I guess that I would think is a nuance in this is, and maybe the thing we're chasing a little bit, is education, right? Where I think the more we educate you about the tools and the choices you have, this is an overwhelming topic, right? There is a lot of noise. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of buzz. But like giving tools and education to break it down that says, if you have a plumber business, there's a home for some of this. If you basically have a yoga shop, there's room for this. It's not just about technology. This is going to go on for the next 30 years. Like this is a trend that's going to happen for the next 30 years. And if you're on the front end of that, of understanding how to leverage it, you'll be in a better way to continue to adapt, I think. And so maybe what we're really kind of circling around is better education to how these tools can benefit you without sinking the bank, because you're paying all of these big firms and you're basically leveraging a lot of the open source stuff. Maybe that's where the magic is for both of us to continue to lift up these different rural environments.
And I would say the challenge that small businesses face in adapting technology or adapting to any change is you're so busy in the business, you can't focus on the business. And what this time requires is you got to have one foot in the business, operating it, but you need to be looking forward and you need to be thinking more long term. And if you don't, waves are going to pass you by and you're going to get knocked out of business. So,
do you think that's a function? I know we have like 7 minutes left, but do you think this is like a function of building a good business? Like I really believe that, like my co-founder, he had a personal emergency, and so he like just lit out like last week because he had to go do something. But the business continued without him, right? And so could it go a month without him? No. But like could the wheels on the bus continue to go and people knew what they needed to go do for a period of time? To me, that's the health of a business, right? Because then if you are intricate to every little aspect of this, in my opinion, you're building the business the wrong way. It's a hub and spoke where everything's got to go through me, and everything goes through me. Like you take me out of the picture, I'm done. And so part of this is rewiring what success looks like, where you have to give a lot of guiding principles to your people so that they know kind of what if they have to make decisions without you, they know what the guiding principles are. Maybe they don't get it right every single time, but like most of the time they do, and they take ownership and autonomy. That takes some of that like load off of you as the owner. And so I don't know if you've seen that, but I do think that we see this in entrepreneurship a lot, where it's like, I'm only adding value if I'm involved in everything. And we're like, no, that's the wrong way to build a business.
I'm going to give a very practical example. I was filling up water yesterday. I love alkaline water. I just love it. Fell in love with it. I go fill it up once or twice a week. I was talking with the people at the shop. The owner isn't there. It's a bunch of teenagers. And I'm like, hey, I love water. I'd like to buy a water business one day. And because I'm very curious. And the young woman who worked there, she said, oh, please don't do it. Oh, my God. There's so many things. These machines break down all the time. And we can't order the parts because everything has to go through the owner. But the owner is up in Oklahoma. He's only here every once in a while. You can't even get him on the phone because he doesn't delegate. He doesn't trust anyone. He owns a couple water shops. Everything has to go through him. He's not able to delegate. He's not responsible. The business is just going to struggle along. And I see that with a lot of small business owners, that they identify themselves as the business. Yep. They need to be intrinsic to everything, and it is their baby. And what I want to say is, you are not your business. You do not want to make yourself part of your business. You want to figure out how to exit your business, how your business can have a life beyond you. That's the beauty of entrepreneurship. But too many entrepreneurs can only see this stage of business. And I would like people to understand that it's a journey and that you do need to level up over time.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think that that's hard sometimes to see, but that's the only way you're going to basically grow your business too, right? That's a big part of it. And it's even like, I look at like the company that went from 0 to 10 million, right? There's phases where they had to basically reinvent themselves. And I think founders have to go through this. I do it, I delegate it, I give ownership, and I invest, right? There's a model where like that person has to scale if you want to get to those goals.
Yeah. Ultimately, I'm a former teacher. If I'm doing all the work, I'm not a good teacher. You have to model, you scaffold, and you fade away.
Yep.
Because ultimately, the business, your employees, your team, they have to be able to do it without you.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to tie a neat bow on this.
Yeah. So, if people wanted to get a hold of you or to learn more about what you're doing online, is there a place to go do that?
They can go to alfredomathew.com. That's my personal website. You can check me out on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. And I'm pretty open to conversation.
Well, good. Well, I feel like we scratched the surface a little bit on this one. There's a lot of things we could have done. I think we have a lot of alignment on how we want to see the world. It's just work to get there. So I appreciate you taking the time.
When I'm driving through South Dakota, I will I'll hit you up.
You better do it. That'd be awesome. That'd be good. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you, Todd. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Startup Stories from the Treehouse. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you found our conversation helpful, leave a review. It really helps other founders discover our show. For more insight and episode summaries, don't forget to subscribe to the Wildfire Labs Substack. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more stories with you next time.